Let me show you how to install a 4K dash cam in an Aston Martin DB9. In this episode of Aston1936.com, I'm back at the electronics table of despair, and I've been installing an Aston Installations HD infotainment system upgrade kit, and I've actually worked through all the components if you've been watching all the videos before, but I have one last item to slip into the mix. This is a 4K dash cam, and I want to install a front and a rear dash cam system into my DB9 to catch the chaos and mayhem that might happen to my car. So I have one more electronic thing I want to put in. So let's go over to the bench and have a look at what's in the kit. So the first thing I should talk about is which kit I've actually decided to use. Eagle-eye viewers, and many of you out there are, will realize that when I did my first videos on the infotainment system upgrades, I was talking about fitting one of these Blackview 4K front dash cameras. This one is also internet connected through a 4G connection. Now, I held this up and I was basically doing the layout, and I was like, this is pretty large. And the camera I've ended up going up with is this one, and as you can see, this is pretty considerable versus the size of this one. So I'm making a game time roster change here, and I'm not going to be using the Blackview camera. I think that one's probably more suitable for a small SUV or a larger vehicle. And I'm actually going to be going with a Thinkware dash cam. This is a U1000. Now I purchased it from the same company, Black Box My Car, and they provide these to me as well. They also provided the Blackview camera to me. So not knocking the Blackview camera, it's just a little bit large for the dash of my Aston. And I have experience with this camera already. I've actually purchased one of these before and fitted it to my Sweetie's GTI. And I've been running it for 4 years already there, so I know this is a reliable, great choice. So I'm going to fit the same camera into my DB9. And once you get it unboxed, you can actually see all the components that come with it. So this is a 4K front-facing dash cam. It has audio built into it. It has a micro SD memory slot. So they ship it with a 32 gig micro SD card. But the larger the card, the more storage you'll have, the longer sort of a library of video you'll have. So I went out and bought myself a SanDisk 128 gig high endurance micro SD card. These are designed for essentially being in a dash cam environment. So I'll have links to that down in the comment section. So other things that it comes with is the rear camera. So they sell this as a front camera only kit, but I want to have a rear HD camera. So this is not 4K, this is standard HD, and this will be pointing out the back window. And it hooks up just with a sort of a special USB type connection there. Other bits, so this is the windshield mount that will basically click in and be used with the camera, and this has already got the 3M sort of super duper killer impossible to take off tape applied to it. And they give you a replacement piece of 3M super duper killer tape. So I guess if you have to change your windshield glass, you know, if you get a cracked windshield and you got to move this to a new one, they have a pre-cut, pre-shaped one that you'd be able to utilize. A little manual on how to use the system. And then in this bag there's a polarizing lens filter. So this will take it off, and we're going to apply it to the front camera lens just before we install it in the car. So those are sort of the easy bits. Of course, the hard bits are wiring. So the hardest bit is always for me is to get the power to it. So they give you a cigarette lighter version of the power adapter. So if you wanted to just plug it into a 12 volt socket and run the cord out hanging through the space of the car, they give you one for kind of a quick and easy install. This is maybe useful if you want to play around with it before you do the installation. But what I really want to do is the hardwire kit. So we're going to run this through the car down to the center, the cabin fuse box, and we're actually going to hardwire this into the vehicle. And all there is 3 wires for doing that, and I'll talk more about those later. And then if you're doing a rear camera, there's the cable that runs all the way from the front camera to the rear camera. So they give you honestly a ridiculously long cable. I guess if you had a giant SUV or something, you might use something this long. But we'll be running that cable through the car. So that makes up all the components that we're going to be working with. Let me show you what sort of tools we're going to need now to get it all installed. We're going to need an assortment of fairly basic shop tools to get basically the wiring harness installed in the car. So if we come up here, one of the first things I want to talk about is I've gone and I've got a printout of this cabin fuse box fuse arrangement. And I'll be explaining, which fuse does what, because we're going to have to tap into some fuse power. While we're doing that, I'm going to use a simple voltmeter. If you have any sort of 12 volt DC voltmeter, we'll be able to tell if a fuse has power or not, so that's going to be useful. I have a wire stripper. Of course, you could do that in lots of different ways. I have a crimper that's designed for when you use these type of connectors, so I can crush the barrel. Now in a pinch, pardon the pun, you could use a pair of vice grips just to crush the wires down onto these connectors. Really important are these mini out-of-circuit fuse holders. So we're going to tap into an existing Aston Martin fuse, and these kits are designed to add a second fuse, and they come with different levels of fuses that come with them that you could plug in for the added circuit. So we're going to utilize 1 or 2 of these depending on if your car already has an Aston installations kit installed. You can pick these up off Amazon or the local auto parts store. I think they're about 10 bucks each. So you might need 2 of them. We're going to need some male-female wire connectors. So these are the pink color, which means they're good for, I think, 18 gauge wire. And so I have 3 pairs of these, and you'll see what we use those for. We're going to have to tidy up some wiring, so I have some 4-inch and 8-inch zip ties. I also have a small little collection of zip tie mounts that you might use to tidy up your wiring. You may or may not need those. We're going to do some wire fishing. So we're going to be pulling those wires inside the car. So I have as you've seen in other videos, it's about a 3-foot long flexible plastic giant zip tie from the HVAC section at the home center. This is for using with HVAC ducting, but I found it's really smooth and but strong, and it's nice for sliding in the interior panels. So we're going to be using that again. And I hate using electrical tape, but for pulling wires, it's the perfect thing. So I have a roll of electrical tape. We're going to be doing a little layout work to decide exactly where to put stuff. So I have some blue masking tape that I'm going to stick on the glass. I have a measuring tape and a pencil to go with it. And then because we're going to be mounting stuff on the windshield, you're going to want to make sure your glass is super clean. So I have a clean microfiber towel just so you can buff out the glass before we install anything. So before we start working in the car, I want to do a little preparation of the wiring here at the bench. So if we look at the 3 wires that come off the harness, this one will I don't know, in a close-up we might read, it says battery. So what that means is this needs to be on constant 12 volt power, whether the key is on or the key is off. The black is the ground, and that's fairly self-evident. It comes with a nice ground connector that we could put under one of the bolts over by the cabin fuse box. And the red wire says ACC. So this means accessory power, or basically power that comes on with the ignition switch. So what I want to do is prepare them for use in the car. And I also want to get the actual fuse, the add a fuse ready as well. Now you can see when you see one that's unopened, It has a barrel connector on it, so basically you'd put a wire in, crimp it, and then it's permanently connected. I want to use one of my disconnectable type male-female deals here. So I've already stripped off a little bit of I cut the old barrel connector off, stripped, and I crimped on a female socket onto this one. So this will be used for the always on power, the way I'm going to use it in my car. So while we're talking about it, let's go ahead and take a male connector, which will mate up with that, give it a twist. And then the way these things work is you just put it into the jaws of the color that match. So this is a red connector. It'll crimp in the red slot. And then give it a good tug to make sure it's fully connected. So when we're in the car, that will work together with this. And that will make the always on power connection. Similarly, we're going to use a male connector and put it onto the accessory power connection. And then, because I already have a ground available for me from my Aston installations kit, I'm going to actually cut this one off. Now, you wouldn't do that if you didn't have an Aston installations kit already in the car. So I'm going to trim that and then strip this. All right, so that's good and connected. Now, we need to make a decision about what size of fuse to add to our add a fuse. The box comes with 5 amp, 10 amp, 7.5 amp, and 3 amp fuses. But which one's the right one? Well, I thought it would actually be useful for you guys to see how much power the camera actually takes. So if we go over to the bench, I'm going to show you how many amps this thing actually ends up pulling. So we're over here at my bench. I've got a 12-volt battery here. I've got a jumper lead from the negative terminal coming down to the ground wire, the black wire that goes to the camera. And then I have the red positive lead. I'm going to, even though it's black, ignore that. I'm going to use the positive of the battery. I'm going to run it through the amp meter function on my voltmeter, and then it comes down and connects to both of the 12 volt, both the accessory and the battery connections. And then let's see how much current parasitic draw this unit will have when it's running. So we're about just under 0.2 amps, and we can see over here it's starting to boot up. And I think when she's booted up, she's going to talk to us and tell us that she wants an SD card installed.
Insert a memory card.
And then once it sort of is all booted up, it's using about 150 milliamps of power.
Insert a memory card.
So now that we know it uses basically way less than an amp, we could basically choose to go with the smallest fuse of the set. So I'm going to use the 3 amp. And the way these add-a-fuse things goes is the fuse that we pull out from the car, the original socket, you put that in the first row here. And then we put our added fuse into the second row. So that's the one where the power will come up from the car, go across the 3 amp fuse, and head on its way out to the camera. So before we mount the camera into the car, we should get it prepared. One of the easiest things to do then is just to put the new either the one they shipped it with or your upgraded SD memory card in there. It'll only go in one way, and you just push it in. That's the wrong way then, I guess. So it goes in with the mounting or the electronic tabs facing the roof of the car. And so that's in nice and flush. So the next thing we want to do is we want to get the lens prepared. So I'm going to peel off the piano black finish protection first. Okay, so I've left the blue one on the lens for now because that's going to be clean underneath. And it's time to fit our, in their terms, Thinkware circular polarizing lens filter. And so this is basically going to cut a lot of the glare out and help enhance the color. So there's a clear tab on this. It might be hard to see on camera, and then there's a blue tab. I think the blue tab is protecting the adhesive side. And what they're also saying is that we want to line up, there's these little, if you look at the black circular ring around there, there's a little gap, and there's a gap at the top. They want those vertically. So what we're going to try to do is align those onto the camera and stick this little lens cover on this way. So I'm just going to wing it. This is a one shot, so I'm going to take this cover off. And there's our completely clear, clean, original lens. And now I'm going to peel off the blue sticky there. Keep my fingers off the lens. Maybe you can see the little alignment marks now. And I'm going to come over. Well, I'm going for it. And there we have it installed. It's got its sunglasses on now. I can leave that on there. I just have to remember to take it off when it's go time. All right, so that's ready to go over and start getting mounted into the car. The other thing I'm going to do is you can see that there's a front Thinkware Dashcam piece of text. It goes towards the lens. And there's two connections on the back and one on the front. And they slide sideways. So you put it on. And it's offset. And then slide it back over to the center. So when we're installing the camera, we can have it pre-installed like this. We're going to peel off the stick and just stick it to the glass. But in the future, if you ever need to get the camera off, you're going to need to side slip the camera this way with this still stuck to the glass, and then you'll be able to pull the camera down and it'll come back off again. So cameraman Rob and I are jammed in the car again. We're going to try our best to get you good footage of actually how to pull this off. So the first thing that you want to do is just not sticking it down or anything. You just want to actually experiment and see where you're going to position the camera. So I've decided I want to tuck it in right here, just off to the right of the center console lamp module, and it'll sit up here. Because when I'm in the driver's position and I'm driving forward, the mirror and all this other stuff is kind of blinding me. I won't even see this. Basically, the passenger is going to see this sucker. Another consideration is that this is the side where the power connection and the connection to the rear camera, if you're going to fit one, is going to be on. So I'm thinking about, I'm going to bring the wiring out right up in this corner, which is kind of an advantage. So I'm going to remove the rear center lamp pod, and I'm going to try to get the wires popping out right in the corner here. I can feel there's a bit of a gap. So that'll look pretty nice. The wires will come out and just daylight for just a short distance and plug into the camera. So it'll look really nice and clean. So this will be the spot that I'm going to mount the camera. Now, if we pan back, that means I need to get the wire for the power in through the lamp pod, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to run it across this front cant rail, in behind the side cant rail, down the A-pillar, down the side, and down to the cabin fuse box. So that's one of the hardest parts of this whole thing, is the wiring. So we're going to work on this. So one of the prerequisites I'm going to ask you to do is you're going to remove the rear view mirror. and you're going to remove the center reading lamp pod so that it'll be easier for us to get these wires pulled in. So you're going to see those vanish here shortly. While we're here talking about it, let's talk about the rear camera. So here's our little baby rear camera. It has basically once we stick this little part to the glass on the rear window, we can aim where it's pointing, which is a nice feature. It's also probably a good time for me to show you that if you're turning this, there'll be essentially one position where you can pull it apart. So if you ever have to get the camera off for some reason, you can actually do that even once it's been mounted to the car, because the connection is just going to be rotating on the end there. So this plastic bracket will just let it release at one magic position. So where I'm planning on putting this is I'm going to orient it something like this, up right to the headliner. So then the cable is going to come off this direction, and I'm going to tuck it up above the headliner, and I'm going to get into the cant rail right here and tuck it all the way along till I can come back up to the front and cross over as well. So enough talking about it, let's get started. So I'm going to get that rear view mirror off, the center lamp pod off, and we're going to gear up here to start pulling the power cable to the front camera. So to pull the power harness in, we're actually going to start at the middle. So we're going to start right here, and the power connection that's heading towards the fuse box is going to go down this way, and the power head that has to go over to the camera is going to go that way. So this is where the journey begins, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put my pry tool in here, and the cant rail here is just held on with fir tree clips, but you don't actually need to separate the fir tree clips, because if you do, then you have to replace them. So I'm just going to use this to make a little extra space when I need it. But that's when my smooth tool here, I'm just going to shoot it under the cant rail here across until it pops out, which is super easy. And now I'm going to use the electrical tape, and I'm going to tape this on so that I can pull it across. So I'm going to try that again. Now I'm going to lever this down just a little bit. And that's honestly probably the hardest part of the whole cabling job. So now I'm just going to roughly pull some length through, and let's go ahead and finish fitting this over to where the camera is going to sit. So back inside the car, the idea here obviously is that we're going to tuck this which is really easy, we're going to tuck that along the headliner, and then that just all disappears. But we have to get ourselves out to the front there. So the rear view mirror is removed, the lamp pod's removed, and what I want to do now is see if I can fish this through over into this hole there. And what we want to do now is we want to get it through forward here. There we go. And now that will be able to be tucked up and come out at this corner. And I'm not quite sure about the length yet, so what I'm hoping to do is just leave a little pull string of it out here that I'll be able to tuck up into the cant rail and pull it back tight after I have it attached to the camera. So that's the microphone from my Aston Installations HD kit that sits up there. So now let's go ahead and work on getting the power down to the fuse box. So what I want to start doing now is just turn this and start tucking it Gently pull the cant rail back a little bit as needed. And I can run the power. And this actually pulls up, and I can slip this around the back. And then you can just take your time, you know, work that all back up into place so it's invisible. So the next part of the journey is getting this cable, and we're going to run it in behind this panel here. And what I found that if I pull the bottom corner of the glove box panel down, I'm using these two fingers, and it just flexes this out. It gives me some flexibility on this corner. And and then I noticed I can pull this back and away pretty easily. So I'm going to run this cable over to the front. And then tug the panel back. And I won't spend all the time on camera, but basically you can sit here and work the details. And then just tuck this in behind. And then you get down to this corner, and you can bring it around, and you can pull this side panel out a little further. And just like that, it's now tucked around where it's on the back side of the pillar here now. So the next part of the work is to run you've got your carpet here. Well, you can tug this back and down, and you can get the cable tucked up above and across. So just take your time and knock this out. So then once you've got it up there, so you'll come across the top of the fuse panel here. This, when you're all finished up, might be where you put a few of those zip tie mounts to mount this. And then we're going to be trying to work our way inside the fuse box. So you can, now I've got the side carpet out here as well right now because I'm working on putting in my Aston installations kit. But there's a little spot right here where you could tuck each of these connectors underneath there because the carpet squishes down, and you'll be able to get this cable inside the chamber here. And then you'd be able to come across to your ATA fuses. Now, again, I've got a few extra ATA fuses in here right now because I have the Aston installations kit. I'll show you in just a second where you're going to add yours. If you have the Aston installations kit, you actually have the accessory. You have the ground wire, the black, and the red wire for the accessory hookup already in the kit. So these will plug into these two connections. And the only connection we'll have to make is the one ATA fuse that I'm going to show you next for the yellow. So let's get on with that. So now we have to figure out where we can plug this guy in and not interfere with anything else in the car's operation. So down here you can see some ATA fuses that are already in the car. And these are for part of my Aston installations kit. They're tied into fuse 77 with their yellow line, that's their always on power. And they're tied into fuse 56 with their red, which is the second from the end one here. And this is their key on accessory power. Now, and then this brown one over here, just if you're interested, is their detection for the reverse light to see if it's shifting into reverse. So we need to find, and they've included in their kit already a hookup for a dash cam. They have the black wire that'll go to our black wire, which is the ground, and they have the red, which is the accessory power, essentially a branch off of this circuit, ready to go for our red accessory circuit. So all we need to do is tap into one spot for the yellow, the always on power. Now, if you didn't have an Aston installation kit already in your car, I would just be telling you use 77 for your always on power and use 56 with a second one of these for your accessory switch power. So I'm going to try and find another fuse that's always sitting here with always on power. So I have the key off right now, and I can hold one of my probes at the voltmeter on ground, which is anywhere on the metal frame here. And then I can touch these inspection tips on the tops of the fuses. There's no power on that one, so that's off unless the key's on. That's off. That's off. That's off. Aha. So there's one that's got power to it all the time. This is a 20 amp fuse, and if I check the table, I see that that is actually shown as spot 55, and that has full-time power. So I would use that one, except I've realized that there's no orientation I can get this plugged in where it doesn't bump in to one of these existing Aston installations fuses. So I'm just going to keep looking. So again, I'm back on that one. There's power. All right, there's a 10 amp right beside it. I think this is for the hazard switch on the center console. This is fuse 56 or 58. It doesn't really matter because I'm not really messing up what's tied to it. So I'm going to pull this one, and I should be able to orient my add-in fuse this way with the wire coming up the top. So we pulled out the 10. And now we'll add it in to the first row of my add a fuse. And then we just simply slip this back in. And there we have it. Now we've got, this is my permanent always on power. We could even confirm that. There we have 12.8 volts ready to use for our connection. So as I would always suggest, when it comes time to use this, before you do all the final zip tying and everything, we're just going to want to hook everything up as a test before I route everything and make it all pretty. So we'll come back and hook these up once we're ready to turn the camera on. Okay, now for it's really crowded, and we have to start worrying about pulling the cable for the rear camera. And essentially, what you saw me doing earlier, complaining about, is that there's this small little end that's straight, and this is the one that's going to be plugging into the actual rear camera. And I've kind of got this much cable, stretched out here enough to kind of go from where my hand is over to the center of the glass. And then from that bundle, I have enough cable stretched out to run all the way along the cant rail. And this is the right angle connector. This is what's going to plug into the front camera body. This is how much cable will be left over that I have to find a place to hide somewhere. So I'm going to show you where I'm going to hide it and why I'm going to start pulling basically from this area back behind this seat. And I'm going to pull the one piece up for the camera body itself, and then I'm going to pull the second piece up to run along the cant rail. So that's the idea to get started. And I've shown this in several other videos. You can see obviously I have my rear center console out. As part of that video, you have to remove the rear seat back. And so I'll have a link somewhere up above here right now. But to pull this out, basically you pull up the rear seat squab from the Velcro. There's no tools for that. You'll pull off this lower little seat back part that's there. That's also held on with Velcro. You'll remove 2 screws, and then you'll lift the seat back up, and it just comes off. And now I'm going to sort of struggle around to get this folded out of the way. because where I'm trying to get to is this little pocket of space that has this sound deadener in it. I'm going to pull it out, and then I can get my hand in to this little cavity. This is the spot where I'm going to try and keep all the bulk cable is essentially zip tied or sitting in here. So now we're going to do some cable pulling. So what I want to do is I want to get those two ends of the cable, sneak them up behind this and come up here. Well, this actually isn't too bad. We'll do our best to try and get some footage of it. But I'm going to slide in the gap here at the top. And it's really pretty simple. Just reach in there and you can grab it. And so that's perfect, because now I'm going to try to pull up my cables. So I've got my bundle, and I'm going to try and tape on the straight part. This is for the rear camera, and we'll see if we can get it up to here. And there's our first piece through. Now, this makes it a lot easier to do the second one, because I can just use this. I can just tie onto the same cable. So truth be told, a few minutes of frustration later, but I managed to get it fished up here. I can pull through all the length I need for the front one. And you can see this gives me a nice little tidy pocket where I'm going to be able to keep the XX cable tucked away here, you know, in behind the corner of the seat. What I want to do next is get them sort of sorted out here. The long one is going to the front, hanging out the door. And you can just pull this down enough and start getting things coming forward. Now the rear cable, we're just going to basically be pushing it up and tucking it in. Like that. So we're, you know, basically at the point now where we have to mount the camera, then we'll pull all the slack back. But I'm also going to pull the front camera stuff through. So this is the easier part. Just use your trim tool. Just like we did before now, run this through like we did with the power connection. Hopefully there's a little pocket of space that we'll be able to pop those out and it'll still look nice. So now we're outside the car. You can actually, maybe the camera will pick it up, but there's the cable that we've tucked in behind the headliner, and it's just dangling out there now. So we have to find the center of the rear glass, because that's a little, when you're stuck in there and you're trying to figure it out, you're kind of just winging it. So what I was going to do was put a piece of blue tape on the outside, just on the hook to the glass. And I'm coming right along this black line here. And the width of the glass is 38.5 inches. So at 19.25 inches, I'm going to put myself a mark. So 19.25, the pointy piece of this blue tape is going to be at 19.25. And then what I've noticed is that if you still have your factory original glass, there's actually some labeling up here. It says Pinklington. So if you're trying to do this without measuring, it's between the K in pink and the L is about the center of the glass. So now I'm going to just put myself a blue tape at the halfway point going straight down. So now when I'm inside the car, I'll be able to see this, and I know that the left edge of this is the center line. We're close enough to the center line for what matters. So I'm going to probably want to have the lens looking rearward at that center line. So we're inside the car now. You can see the blue tape. Gives me at least some, that's the left edge of that's the center line. So now's the time I want to get the glass around here as clean as I can with my clean microfiber. And once I've got that done, I'm actually going to use a little bit of my alcohol and water spray bottle. Every garage has that, right? Because I really want the 3M sticky pad to stick to the glass. And okay, so the glass is super clean. And positioning wise, I want to get the center line of the lens in the center line of the blue left edge. Taking off the clear cover now. And I'm going to peel so I've got that peeled. It's kind of a one-shot deal, but I'm aiming. Here we go. Now remember, you can always turn the camera to get that angle right. So all you're trying to do is get this up to the headliner as close as you can. And now we can cheat. If I can figure out how do we take the camera out. And just like that. Got the it all tucked away. So you can take your time, make sure you've got it tucked in as carefully as possible, but that's all there is to getting the rear one up and mounted. So let's turn our attention to the front now. So the next part for the front camera is we need to get the center dash lamp pod and these cables more in their final position. So I've got my center lamp module. I actually popped out the light fixtures. They just, come out the front. You just squeeze in these tabs and they pop out so that I can have a little bit more flexibility while I'm putting this in. So as I've shown in the video for refitting this, there's this rear tab that fits in a slot above this module. So it's really hard to not break those off. And I'm going to want to have these coming out the side in front. So at this corner is where I'm going to want them to daylight. So just to give myself a little flexibility for now, I'm going to drop the light bulbs through those holes And I'm just focusing on getting that rear tab to get my microphone cable off to the side, these two up into that space. Maybe I can just show you where I've got them sitting right now. And I'm just trying to get that front slot thing connecting. Okay. So now I'm just gonna pull this down and leave it a little bit loose with my cables. I'm just gonna tuck those out the front like that. And I have them kind of loose. There's plenty of space inside. And you can see now, if I push that up there, that's a pretty good fit. It's going to be invisible that these are sticking out, and it's going to look pretty slick and custom. So back here, I'm just going to worry about getting my microphone cable where it normally sits. And now I want to check that I can pull my slack in and out still. I can, so I'm going to keep these loose for now. And I'm going to not put the screws in for that yet until I've got this all mounted up. So in preparation, let's get the glass really clean up here. And I'm going to use the alcohol again. Just give the glass an extra wipe with the alcohol water solution. And then dry it. That is clean as a whistle. So let's go over and get the camera prepared for mounting. So finally the scene. I don't know how long this video is, but we're at the part where we're going to mount the actual camera. This is probably the only one scene that's pretty interesting. But the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure I've got these sort of roughed in to the right lengths. So the power and the rear camera. And then you can sort of decide for yourself, okay, well, where do you want to aim it, right? So you can sit here and you can play for 5 minutes. But basically you just want it as forward pointing as possible. And then I want the cables kind of just in line off that corner. So that's probably where I'm going to put it. And I'm going to stick it with the cables attached to help me get it right. And this was not something I could practice. So this is the only time I've tried this. I'm just taking my time. Just aiming towards the front of the car. And there we go. You're doing it mostly for aesthetics for inside the car. The fisheye is so wide on these lenses that it's not going to really do anything to adjust the view that it's recording. And then once you've got it on there, you need to give it a solid push. And like that, it's installed. All right, so now I'm going to worry about getting the lamp pod and any of the slack dealt with. Now that I have it in place, what I think I'm going to do is just run the rear cable extra off to the left here, because I know there's a lot of space above here. And tuck that in, and that's easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now I'm going to get the light units in. So as you've seen, I'm going to put the Phillips screw in, put the cover in here, get my rear view mirror mounted up next. All right, we're getting pretty close to done. So we got our camera all back up. I have the center lamp pod all tucked in. The cables all just disappear in there. You can't even see them. Rear view mirrors remounted. So we're looking good up there at the finished end. And so now we can come back down here to the power end. And as I mentioned earlier, I just want to, before I make all this pretty, I want to hook it up and make sure everything works. So I'm going to hook up the ground first. And then the red, the accessory power. And then the constant power, and this should make the camera boot up. All right, so we've got our power connections made. We weren't sure if we had to turn the power key to the on position. We did, and the Dashcam Overlord came to life, and she's basically telling us to connect my smartphone to a Wi-Fi zone called Thinkware. Now I'm going to do a different video on how to use the system, but I think it'd be cheating you if I didn't at least get tied up to that Wi-Fi zone, get the app loaded, and have a quick look at what the cameras are showing. So let me get that set up now. Okay, well, the first thing, just the quickest overview of how to use it. You connect to the Wi-Fi zone called Thinkware. All right, and once I'm connected to that Wi-Fi zone, I can go and run the Thinkware cloud app, and that's a free download.
Connected to a smartphone.
So she says I'm here. That's good news. I'm not going to cover all the details, but we're just going to go jump right into live view. And there we have the front of the shop. Like I said, super fisheye, which is what it's designed to be, but that's terrific. With my crappy fluorescent shop lighting, it'd be much better outside. If you tap the screen, you can go to the back camera, reverse, which is an HD camera. Again, crappy shop lighting, but there's the rear camera working as well. So mission accomplished. We have a dash cam that is working. Now, in another video, I'm going to cover the settings and how you might want to configure it for your car, but that'll be down the road. I want to get this video wrapped up. All right, well, now it's time for you to finish up dressing your cabling. You know, you go ahead and get this properly routed in through there, get the slack, you know, taken up, use your little zip tie mounts and kind of make all that perfect. You can go ahead and put the cover back on your center fuse box, put your carpet back in, just go around and kind of finish the whole project off. I'm not going to bore you with that, but that's the easy stuff. So there you go. You could basically follow those instructions to fit any brand of dash cam into your Aston Martin. Hopefully you find this kind of helpful, that I showed you kind of how to tear it all apart. You didn't have to rip out all the interior panels. We were able to do it just by, you know, tucking things in, and I'm pretty happy with the result. It looks fantastic. So down here, you're going to find a link to my companion blog article where I'll certainly have links to the products I use, the zip tie mounts, the cameras, all the things that I use to pull this one off. Up here, you're going to find a some sort of article that's related. I don't know what it is, but I hope you enjoy it. Down here, you can go ahead and subscribe and like. Helps a lot if you go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and you'll get automatically notified when the next videos come out. And as always, I love to hear your comments. I'm sure many of you have fitted dash cams to your car and you've got different bits of advice you'd share with me. Please leave those in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching.